itself. Let us bring in Yuval Steinitz, who is the country's intelligence minister, and he joins me live from Jerusalem. Mr. Steinitz, welcome back to the program. Do you think that your Prime Minister's speech...
Good evening from Jerusalem.
Good evening. Did your Prime Minister's speech affect the dial in the United States Congress? I mean, obviously, you're all hoping that they won't back any deal. What do you think?
I think it was a very important speech, a historic speech, and it's very important that Israel speak up about its national security and what might affect its very existence. I know that it creates some tension with the administration, naturally so, because we are very critical of the trajectory of the negotiations so far, but nobody can expect little Israel to keep silence on such a vital issue of national security. And I think that such speeches do have some effect.
Okay,
yes.
Well, I just wanted to ask you...
Yes, please.
Do you think that Iran, as the President of the United States said tonight, you know, nobody quite knows, the deal hasn't been made, nobody really knows the parameters of them, and he said that Israeli government officials themselves, you all admit that Iran has kept its end of the deal under the interim agreement. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that Iran, and we said it in advance, that we think that Iran have no reason to violate the interim agreement because this might help it to get a very convenient final agreement. They didn't violate the interim agreement. They did violate all their international obligations previously to the NPT. This is what 6 UN Security Council resolutions declared, that Iran was violating once and again and again and again all the commitments that it took upon itself in the NPT. So Iran cannot be trusted. I have heard those words about Iranophobia. This is the most phobia, the most justified phobia in the world. It's like, you know, the German phobia in the 1930s. There are very good reasons to be afraid from Iran, that will become a threshold nuclear state 1 year from the bomb, we believe even less than 1 year, and to be afraid of an agreement that 10 years from now will enable Iran to remain threshold nuclear state, not 1 year, but maybe few weeks from fissile material for many nuclear weapons. Iran cannot be trusted. Iran is not Holland, and we have to be very careful about this issue. It's about the future of the world, not just about the existence of Israel.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about your existential threat that you raised. But first, I want to ask you this. You know, your side briefed reporters quite significantly before this speech that somehow there would be something new, that the Prime Minister Netanyahu would come to the Congress with some, I don't know, smoking gun, new evidence to say that this was, you know, something different than we all thought. He didn't bring anything new. It was really a sort of a reiteration of the things that he said many, many times in the past. I want to know how you react to what Nancy Pelosi, a staunch supporter of Israel, the minority leader of the United States Congress, said. She said, "That's why, as one who values the U.S.-Israel relationship and loves Israel, I was near tears throughout the Prime Minister's speech, saddened by the insult to the intelligence of the United States as part of the P5+1 negotiations and nations." She's basically saying your Prime Minister insulted the whole of the United States and the President.
Well, I don't think that this is the case. I like Nancy Pelosi very much, and many other congressmen and senators from both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. They are all our friends, and we believe we do appreciate it. And by the way, we do appreciate the friendship and commitment of the President of America and of the Secretary of State. And I do admire Wendy Sherman, the chief negotiator. Still, we have different perspective.
Okay.
We are deeply disturbed. It's maybe because we are here in the Middle East, we feel the heat of Iran. We are threatened by Iran from the south, from the north, and we don't believe that Iran can be trusted. Supervision or inspection, it's very important, but if Iran will park too close for nuclear weapons, the temptation within Iran, not now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, to jump to the bomb, exactly like what happened in North Korea after quite similar agreement, will be very big. And therefore, we are not against a diplomatic solution on the conditions that it will be comprehensive and satisfactory solution. Such a solution should neutralize the Iranian nuclear threat and not just inspect it.
Right. But here's the thing, Mr. Steinitz. Your prime minister, according to the U.S. Senate and people like Senator Feinstein, and we've just been speaking to Robert Einhorn, who's been around these negotiations for a long time, offered nothing new. What is the alternative if there is no deal? Because the idea that you can get a better deal, everybody says, is kind of a non-starter. It hasn't happened in the past, and it's not likely to happen out of the blue now. And inspectors are better than no inspectors. Restrictions are better than no restrictions.
First, you know, it's quite paradoxical on the one hand to ask the Prime Minister not to reveal anything from the ongoing negotiation, and then to say, yeah, he didn't expose anything new. No, you have to decide.
No, I said an alternative.
Prime Minister made... Just one thing to add before the alternative. Prime Minister made several very important issues. One of them was to struggle against Rouhani and Zarif charm campaign. You know, some people tend to believe that Iran is not that terrible anymore because Rouhani and Zarif has changed the tone. And it was very important for the Prime Minister and for the world to remind ourselves how dangerous Iran is, how it's behaving in the wider Middle East, what it's doing to its own people, and how it's still trying to cheat and to keep itself as a threshold nuclear state, to become a threshold nuclear state. Now, what are the alternatives? The alternatives are not very easy. But we believe that if Iran will face greater pressure and more determination from the world, maybe there will be some crisis in the negotiation. It's happened several times in the past. But at the end of the day, if you really force the Iranian to choose, you want to save the economy or you want to save 6,000 centrifuges. If you force them to choose, if there is nothing in between, I believe that at the end of the day, the Iranian will give in and will prefer to save the country economy and not to preserve several thousand centrifuges or the right to proceed with R&D on much more efficient centrifuges, which in my view is one of the most important topic under discussion. I think the world have enough leverage on Iran in order to force the Iranian, you need also the determination to give in and to dismantle to the level of neutralizing the threat and not living with it under some inspection or verification mechanism.
Okay, Yuval?
This is not good enough.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I just want to ask one final question. How do you explain the difference in opinion on these vital issues between, let's say, Mossad, your intelligence, and your prime minister? You know that all these leaked cables and other such things, the intelligence and in the military, they believe the timeline is not as contracted as Prime Minister Netanyahu says, and there is actually a much longer. And people will say, you know, the prime minister, you know, gave this same speech 25 years ago in the United States, saying that next year or the year after Iran will have a bomb. How do you explain your own intelligence saying that, hang on, he's got the timeline wrong?
No, this is not the case. I'm an Israel Minister of Intelligence. I am speaking almost on a daily basis with the people of the IDF intelligence, with the head of the Mossad. I'm getting all the reports on a daily basis, and I'm telling you, we now estimate that the forthcoming agreement, I mean, it's not concluded yet, but from what we already can see, will give even less than 1 year breakout time in the next few years, that after 5 or 6 years, the breakout time will even be reduced, and after 10 years, when some of the restrictions will be over, will be lifted, it might be even 1 month's breakout time for enough fissile material for many bombs. Now you are asking about the warning that Netanyahu made already 20 years or 15 years ago. You are perfectly right. Iran was supposed to develop nuclear weapons already several years ago, and there were many difficulties and many problems in the Iranian nuclear project. I think that pressure from the world and the prevention of selling of commodities, of knowledge, of materials to the Iranian also played a role. And good for us and good for the world, they are not there yet. But now they are close, and if the agreement will be the wrong agreement, they might get even closer and might establish themselves as a threshold nuclear state, very close to the production of nuclear weapons. And we have to learn something from recent history. What happened with North Korea after a similar agreement shouldn't repeat itself with Iran.
Yuval Steinitz, Minister of Intelligence from Israel, thank you for joining me with The View from Jerusalem. Thank you very much indeed.
You are most welcome.
And as we have seen, Iran dominated events in Congress today, and we will talk more about that later. But first, a little bit of Tehran